jarring cacophony tells you you're back with the Power of Three podcast as we continue our adventures through the Doctor universe in print. I'm Kenny Smith. Today we're taking a look at a 13th Doctor adventure by somebody whose name is going to be very familiar to you. Certainly by this Saturday will be. It's Juno Dawson, who's the writer of this Saturday's episode, The Interstellar Song Contest. Juno, of course, wrote this novel, The Good Doctor, as well as Doctor Who Redacted, the web series that you'll be able to find on BBC Sounds. So what can I tell you about The Good Doctor? It was the 63rd novel in the BBC New Series Adventures range. It was written by Juno Dawson and featured the 13th Doctor Graham, Yaz and Ryan. And according to TARDISFandom.com, this was the first full-length novel to focus on the 13th Doctor in a significant role. Published on the 25th of October 2018 with a cover by Lee Binding, this was actually available in several shops several days before its official release date. Naughty bookshops. But on the plus side, you get to look at that glorious cover, which has got Jodie Whittaker front and centre. There's a spy robot over to the right hand side of the book with a glowing red eye or some sort of glowing red energy coming out of it. And on the left, there's a stained glass window showing Bradley Walsh as Graham, which plays a significant part in the book, given that Graham is mistaken for the Doctor. Also of note, the audiobook, which was read by Claire Corbett, was released on the same day as the print version. So let's turn the book over, and on the back it tells us, on the planet Lobos, the Doctor halts a violent war between the native Loba and human colonists. Job done, the TARDIS crew departs, only for Ryan to discover he's left his phone behind. Again. Oh, poor Ryan, I think we've all done that at one point. Upon returning, the Doctor finds that the TARDIS has slipped hundreds of years into the future, and that something has gone badly wrong. The Loba are now slaves, serving human zealots who worship a godlike figure known as the Good Doctor. It's time for the Doctor to face up to the consequences of her last visit. With Lobos on the brink of catastrophe, will she ever be able to make things right? Dum, dum, dum. There we go, that's how it stands. We are now going to find out a little bit more about the book by listening to an excerpt from near the beginning. And we're going to join the Doctor, Graham, Ryan and Yaz on their adventures. And it's going to be read for us by Claire Corbett. And remember, this is still available from BBC Audiobooks to buy.
Oh, Ryan, mate, Graham sighed. You only got that last week. I know. He was absolutely terrible with phones. He often wondered if he was cursed. He remembered his nan had once lent him some money to get a new one when he'd dropped the last one in the bath while taking a... Well, the less said about that, the better. Doctor, we've got to go back. I can't afford another one. The Doctor didn't look thrilled at the prospect. Ryan had her down as someone who preferred forward momentum. Come on, please. It's brand new. Still has that little bit of plastic on the screen and everything. Please. Please, please.
Oh, all right. She ran a hand through her mop of hair. Do you know exactly where you left it?
Yep, in the radio control room.
The Doctor considered this. Right. That structure wasn't stable. I'll materialise at the foot of the tower and we'll fetch it. In and out. Understood?
Got you.
A slight frown furrowed her brow. The Loba and humans have a lot to sort out, and I'm not meant to interfere, whatever that means. To be honest, I was never 100% clear on that bit. The Doctor pulled her lever in the opposite direction and checked something on the monitor. Graham raised a hand tentatively.
Boss, we'll still be back in time for Pointless, right?
The Doctor smiled as the TARDIS landed, the column grinding to a halt. Yasmin, you do the time travel explanation for Graham, yeah? We'll be back in 5. She took Ryan by the hand. Come on, you. Let's make this a ninja-like return visit. The Doctor and Ryan crossed from the TARDIS into the night air. Ryan always found it so odd, that split second when you passed from the ship to wherever it had landed. It was like stepping out of a bubble without popping it. But why was it night?
It was pitch dark. When they'd left, it had been a summery twilight.
That's odd, the doctor said. We must have jumped forwards a few hours.
Or back.
I hope not. I don't fancy crossing paths with ourselves last night. Paradoxes are never fun.
The doctor surveyed the area. The TARDIS seemed to have materialised in one of the cobbled plazas of Newtown. Lobos reminded Ryan of a messy holiday to Crete he'd once been on with his mates. The climate, the rocky hillsides rolling down to the sea. From what little he remembered of it, there were lemon groves everywhere. And Lobos was similarly dotted with trees bearing the strangest purple fruit he'd ever seen. The bushes and vines chirped with what he hoped were crickets. He didn't take stuff like that for granted anymore. "This isn't the radio tower," he said.
I know.
The doctor stroked the side of the TARDIS and gave it a pat.
No one's perfect, Ryan. It's just on the other side of the hills, isn't it?
Yeah.
Off we go then.
Do you want me to Google map it? The doctor looked at him sympathetically as she started charging across the square towards the steep, winding road that led up the hillside out of Old Town.
Ryan. 1, my sense of direction is second only to my sense of righteous indignation. And 2, the reason we're here is that you've lost your phone.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Even though he towered over her, Ryan always struggled to keep up with the doctor when she was on a mission. Nothing to do with his dyspraxia, and everything to do with her limitless energy. Suddenly, the doctor stopped dead in her tracks, and Ryan crashed into her back. "Oof, sorry."
No, the doctor said. No. That was my fault.
She seemed to be staring up at the sky, the 3 moons, all matching crescents of different sizes. "What? What's up?" She looked pale.
Ryan, do you notice anything a little bit different?
He looked around, but everything looked pretty much the same in Newtown. "Nope." The doctor rolled her eyes and took hold of his shoulders to steer him in the right direction.
There.
"Oh, man."
Yep.
The doctor's keen eyes cut through the night.
Where did that come from?
On the horizon, looming over the entire town, was a vast tower. It was almost the same shape as a block of flats, but, even in the gloom, Ryan could see it was painted dark blue. There were huge rectangular windows at the top of the structure.
Remind you of anything, Ryan?
It was unmistakable. It was meant to be the TARDIS.
Thank you very much for that, Claire. And here's some additional bits of trivia for you about The Good Doctor. It was published in Italy by Armenia in 2019 as a paperback, published in China by New Star Press in January 2020 as a paperback, and it was also published in Russia by AST in 2020 as a hardback edition. I wonder if they're still selling those in Russia. Anyway, let's now move on and speak with Juno, who took time out from her schedule to speak with us. And we spoke literally, 3 days before it was announced that she'd be writing for Doctor Who on the telly. So let's now meet the author.
Hi, my name is Juno Dawson, and I'm the author of The Good Doctor.
So Juno, when did your love of Doctor Who begin?
Some of my very earliest memories are Doctor Who. I really grew up on it. I think it was like, I was quite a morbid child, so I liked anything that was going to scare me, whether it was like scary stories or the funny bones. And the fact that you were, as a child, allowed to watch Doctor Who, which is like really scary, was like catnip for me. And so I have very hazy memories of Perry turning into a bird in Vengeance on Varos, even though at that point I think I would have been like 4. I definitely remember Perry having her head shaved in Trial of a Time Lord. I thought I dreamt both of those things. I was so young, they weren't like fully formed memories. But my first real, true memory of Doctor Who was Mel Bonnie Langford in the spinning bubble, the Rani's trap in Thingamabob, Time in the Rani. And And I really, really remember it, and it's really cemented, is because the week after I had misbehaved and so wasn't allowed to watch the next episode. That was my punishment. So I had to wait about 10 years until it was released on VHS. This was before YouTube, kids. And I had to wait 10 years to find out how on earth she escaped the flying bubble trap. It's a long time to wait.
It is. God, unbelievable. I can't believe that. Time in the Rani. An absolute classic. I love it.
I've got very fond feelings for it. I know, quite objectively, it's not a great episode, but as a 5-6-year-old, it was so colourful and camp, and you've got 2 Bonnie Langfords running around. The Tetraps were really scary to me. And actually, when you look back, they're quite a well-realised alien race of the Tetraps. I loved it. And I loved it when I was 5. I loved it when I was a teenager. And I kind of still love it, even though it does contain some absolutely wild dialogue. Do you know what? AI couldn't even come up with dialogue like selective retribution will bring any dissidents to heel.
Exactly.
What? What?
And the tone set from the very beginning, leave the girl, it's the man I want, is just brilliant. It's brilliant.
And not even written by a gay person. So who knew? Yeah.
Yeah, JNT did do the script editing on it pretty much.
That's actually a good point, yeah.
Yeah, but great fun. So did you stick with it during the New Adventures era in the 90s?
I did. So I was that, and there will only be kind of one generation really of children alive now because of when it started that kind of grew up without any Doctor Who. So I would have been 8 when it wound down in 89. And then I drifted away a little bit, and then they repeated them on BBC Two in the early 90s, and my grandma would babysit for us on a Friday night, and she always wanted to watch. And through her, I was properly introduced at an age where I could appreciate it a little bit more. So I remember the Sea Devils and Genesis of the Daleks. I think Power of the Daleks Planet of the Daleks was in there as well. And I became just a fully fledged stan. And at that time, you couldn't be kind of like a casual Doctor Who fan because it wasn't something you could access casually. And I think like a lot of 90s Doctor Who fans, it kind of became really central to my identity. I was like the Doctor Who kid, and my relatives would buy me Doctor Who merch, and they would look out for weird little TARDISes and like toys in charity shops and things like that. And so I started buying them on VHS. I was reading the Target novelizations because, again, no iPlayer, no YouTube. So the only way you could really fill the gaps was to read the novelizations. So I would buy those. I think they were about £2 back then. Or I'd get them out of Bingley Library, protect your local library. And then I realized as I got a little bit older and into my teenage years that there were quite literally these new adventures or missing adventures that continued the story with Ace and the Doctor where we left off in 89. I was maybe a little bit young for them. I remember reading some of them and Ace saying fuck, and I was like, oh, that's a bit mature, kind of. But then I remember when Virgin relaunched the Missing Adventures, they felt a little bit more age appropriate, and so I particularly enjoyed the Missing Adventures. But I dipped in and out of the New Adventures as well.
Brilliant. So when did your own interest in writing begin?
I suppose with reading. I suppose that's where the love of writing starts for everyone, and especially a love of books. I loved books, the physical thing, before I could even read them. My mum had loads of Catherine Cookson and Jilly Cooper and Jackie Collins, and thank goodness I couldn't read them because I was a very small child. But I just loved the covers. I loved everything. I loved the smell of them. And, then through the 90s, I had quite a set diet of kind of Nancy Duquesne's Files, Point Horror, and Doctor Who New Adventures, especially post 96 when they relaunched the Paul McGann, the Eighth Doctor, and Sam. Was that a name? Sam Jones?
Sam Jones, that's the one.
And so I was really into them. And I did kind of start writing fan fiction. We didn't really call it fan fiction then. And because I had no stamina as a writer, what I would kind of do is I would plan out 4-part Doctor Who adventures in the way that Doctor Who magazine did those kind of synopses. And so I was better at coming up with the ideas than I was having the discipline to write a full piece of fan fiction. But yeah, I would plot out 4-part Doctor Who adventures with 3 little cliffhangers, and they would all make sense. I just never. But I suppose if writing is a muscle, I had to build stamina somewhere, and so that was where my fan fiction started.
Fantastic. And then tell us about your early published career. How that all began.
Yes, so I was a primary school teacher, a really lovely time for young adult fiction. I was, teaching year 6 to 11 years old, and it was prime Hunger Games, Twilight, Noughts and Crosses, a really lovely time to be stealing books from 11-year-olds. And I was really struck, and I remain struck by YA fiction, which is its pace. And I do this as an adult, I'm guilty of it. We'll stick with a book to the bitter end, even if it's boring you to tears. Whereas children and young adults do not have that. They will give up. If a book bores them for a second, they will abandon it. And I think I really love books like Noughts and Crosses and The Hunger Games. They're so tightly plotted. They use a lot of the same tricks that Doctor Who uses, lots of cliffhangers and knowing when to, I call it, turn the cards or do the reveal of like a secret. Keeping characters in constant peril, so you have to find out what's going to happen to them. And I started thinking, if I was going to write, I would love to write something for this audience because I love these books. I guess at the time I was quite literally a young adult. And so one summer holidays, I thought, right, I've read a lot of these YA books. None of them really seem to have queer characters. So I'm going to see if I can do something with that. Like, I'm going to see if I can do like just a very sort of mainstream story about witches. But, what if I could sneak in some queer characters and get away with it? And that book became Hollow Pike. And, I was savvy. I did my research online. I joined a writing community online. And I realized, mere mortals can get published. There are ways in. I'd always seen publishing as being something very removed and rarefied. But I realized there are ways for commoners to break in. And so I wrote Hollow Pike and started sending it out to agents. And the rest is history. Here we are. I think that was 13 years ago. So
wow. And of course, as the writing career developed, you got some Big Finish Torchwood work as well.
Yeah, it was all very organic. It all came about at Eurovision, as you do. One year I was at Vienna in 2015 with a lovely man called Matt Nichols, who was working for the brand at the time. And he was like, "You're a Doctor Who fan, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, big Doctor Who fan." And he was like, "Well, my friend is producing some Torchwood audios." And I had seen every episode of Torchwood. And I was like, well, any chance to dip a toe into the world of Doctor Who, 100%. And so I think first up, I was commissioned actually to write what became Awe. But then there were some delays and things to do with, I think, with Eve Miles' availability, I'm not sure, or possibly John Barrowman at that point. So in the meantime, they were like, well, should we do something else? And that's why Dollhouse came about. So I think, weirdly, I was contracted to write Awe first. And I think maybe I did write Awe first. And then the Dollhouse actually ended up releasing first.
The Dollhouse is still one of my absolute favourites. It's just so bloody dark. It does not go where you think it's going to go. And then just, whoa, love it.
It is. Yeah, I mean, it would have slapped if, Captain Jack had been there as the voice of Charlie. It's kind of like a Charlie's Angels pastiche. And that was always the original plan. To this day, I don't know what happened. Because John Barrowman did end up coming back and doing more. But for whatever reason, we didn't have John Barrowman.
Yeah.
That would have been so camp. Obviously, he is cancelled now. But at the time, he wasn't. In 2015, he wasn't cancelled. So.
Yeah. Same. I love him. I absolutely love him. So, The Good Doctor. When did this one come about? Was it Steve Cole who got in touch with yourself?
Yeah, I think so. So I think it came through my agent, possibly not through Steve himself. It was someone who kind of hired Steve to edit the series. It would have been somebody at Penguin Random House. And I don't know how they'd got wind of the fact I was a Doctor Who fan, but my name must have been on a list. And I was kind of offered two options. One of them was to write something that was very much kind of aimed at adults. And that kind of ended up being, I think Naomi Alderman did one. And it would have kind of sat alongside Naomi's book. Or they were like, you could do one of the ones that we aim at younger readers, but that will be the first Jodie Whittaker books to be released. And I was, in fact, we must have known it was Jodie Whittaker at that point. And so I was like, well, what a dream to kind of be first out the gate with Jodie Whittaker with 13th Doctor fiction. And so for whatever reason, that was the one I chose to do. And I think possibly when you are a fan of Doctor Who and you are a writer, you do start kind of banking ideas for episodes in your head with the kind of the fantasy, if you like, that one day the call will come and you will be asked to in some way write Doctor Who. And so I think I did have a kind of notion in my head about what would happen if the Doctor had made a mess. And then they came back to the same, because the Doctor so rarely goes back to the same place twice. And what would happen if they came back and had to live with the consequences of their prior actions? And so the other big memory of the Good Doctor was just how fast it all happened. It was like, we really do need these books to coincide with season 1. So go, like all full steam ahead. And I had to write the book very quickly. I think I wrote the first draft in about 6 weeks.
Wow. That's impressive, because I think that it just, reading it again, it just feels so Jodie Series 1. It's just got that sort of feel. There's no old enemies, nothing like that. There's all the sort of the name dropping and the things like that, and just the fun of it. And it feels absolutely like this is one that almost feels like a Target novelization in places.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I suppose that's because I grew up on a diet of Target novelizations. We were told straight away that kind of, there is a format to these Doctor Who books. There was only so much we could bring to the table. Like, we were told it's in the third person past tense. It has to be suitable for I think we were told to make it suitable for sort of like an 11, 12-year-old reader. And away we went. But I mean, what's remarkable is I had one script to go on. I was just sent, the only script I had to go on was The Woman Who Fell to Earth. And I had not seen a single second of Jodie as the Doctor beyond her saying, is it fantastic? No, brilliant, she says. Her first word. That was it. I had one word. So I knew that she was using her natural Huddersfield accent. That's all. That's kind of all I knew. And the script, I'd read Chris Chibnall's script. So really, it is sheer luck that it in any way sounds like the 13th Doctor. And I think it does. I don't quite know how I managed to land the spaceship as well as I did, but I don't know. It was kind of a real fluke. I suppose, and I think Russell and Stephen Moffat have said in the past as well that the Doctor is always the Doctor. And I do think that when I came back to write for Jodie with Doctor Who Redacted, I think in all of Doctor Who history, there is perhaps only Peter Capaldi and Colin Baker's Doctors that I would write differently, because they had slightly more edge to their Doctors, I think, sometimes. But other than that, the Doctor is the Doctor. They are full of life. They are on the side of right. They're on the side of the underdog. They're on the side of justice and fairness. And they're stringently against violence and bloodshed. So all of those things would be true whichever Doctor I was writing for. And again, that kind of that mad benevolent genius, and I think that was kind of where I set out from. I certainly didn't think, gosh, I bet she's different now she's a woman. Like, that didn't enter my head once. In fact, if anything, there was a good measure of Matt Smith and David Tennant's Doctor in there. Kind of that felt like a good punt.
Yeah, because you mentioned that the story is pretty much the Doctor going back, and it's of course all triggered by Ryan losing his phone. I did wonder, is that something you've done through personal experience?
Actually, no, I hang on to my phone for dear life. Actually, I've never lost a phone. I've lost other things, but no, I think we were kind of told, we were given so little information, and beyond Ryan is dyspraxic, and so it kind of felt like, and having read The Woman Who Fell to Earth, that God love him, he might be inclined for, bouts of kind of forgetfulness or clumsiness, all those things that, I know many people with dyspraxia. So it felt like it rang true. And again, thank goodness, because actually knowing what we know now, yes, it wouldn't have made any sense for Yaz to lose her phone. She's much more on it than Ryan ever was. Yeah, it was fun. It was, yeah.
It definitely comes across that way. And I think that the real joy of this is because the cover, we've got Graham in stained glass, and you look at it first when you're not sure what the story's, think, oh, there he is standing in front of a window, and then of course when you read it, it's brilliant. It's just that whole notion of the whole community of mistaking the Doctor for Graham, and it's just such a wonderful conceit, and the fact you've got such great banter between the Doctor and Graham as a result of that.
Well, I mean, that was, none of us write in a vacuum. When I was writing this at the time, then a lot of people were saying that Jodie could not be the Doctor because she's a woman, and I was like, well, do you want another old white man? And so that's why it made sense for Graham, why history would remember the old white man as the wise person, as the peacekeeper, as the deity. And so, yeah, there is a very, it's not subtle, there's a very unsubtle message in there about the fact that notable women in history get sidelined or forgotten about, or you get phrases like, oh, behind every great man there's a great woman. And I'm like, well, who's behind the great woman? Kind of, so it was a very deliberate choice to have Graham in that sort of prominent role. And I just assumed you're not going to hire Bradley Walsh and not have him be Bradley Walsh. So it didn't take much of a leap to assume that he would be playing lovable Essex stepdad. And so in a way, I wonder if that's why it was easier to give Graham quite a prominent role, because we knew next to nothing about Ryan and Yaz. All three of us were brought into the BBC and we met with some of the brand people, and we were told sort of, again, those kind of facts about them. But like at that point, I remember, and it's so long ago now, I'm happy to say this, I was asked by Penguin Random House to remove any references to Yaz's faith, and there were early references to her sort of partaking in Ramadan and Eid and being a Muslim, and they were told, well, we're not sure how Muslim she is, and I was like, well, she's called Yasmin Khan. I mean, there's a clue there, kind of. But so we kind of took a step back away from anything potentially kind of that would upset the main series, and you have to appreciate the main series is gospel and everything else is additional. But other than that, it just seemed a lot safer to go for Graham. And it kind of worked out because it meant of the three books, one had Ryan on the front, one had Yaz on the front, and one had Graham on the front. So it made sense for this one.
Yeah. Did you do any watching of Hollyoaks to try and get the voices for Yaz and Ryan? Because I know that's what Steve did.
I did. I think I tried to find some, but certainly couldn't find any of Tosin. I think we were told that Tosin was a Southerner playing Northern, which that was true. All three of us had questions about, is there going to be a romantic subplot between Ryan and Yaz? And at the time, I think even Chris Chibnall had not decided. It was still very much up in the air, and obviously that went a very different direction for Yaz. And I think a better direction, if I'm honest. So we just had to do our best. And I mean, I know there has been criticism of the Chibnall era for having too many companions, kind of going back to that kind of like Fifth Doctor, Tegan, Nyssa Adric vibes, kind of. But as a writer, it's great because it means you can take the story off in 4 different directions, which is kind of, very quickly Yaz is separated from the rest of the cast and off she goes having her own little sub-adventure, kind of. And so as that's why Doctor Who's always worked, kind of get all your B plots and C plots.
Absolutely. And how did you find creating your own alien world in Lobos and, of course, the wonderful people of it as well?
Well, they're quite similar to the Carvanista, aren't they? That's all I'm going to say. They're quite similar. An upright hybrid dog man. Welcome to Lobos. I quite like the idea that poor old Laika, who had been sent up into space by the Russians, had somehow been the genetic foundation for a whole species. And it was I think that was, again, because I was such a fan of that first Russell T Davies run. There are a lot under Russell T Davies. There are a lot of human animal hybrids, and there are really good practical reasons for that, which is you don't need to design a whole bodysuit. You can just sort of stick a head. A lot of aliens, oh God, all those aliens with boiler suits during the first couple of years of Doctor Who. Boiler suit, animal head, jobs are good one. Fly head, pig head, sorted. It was on a much smaller budget back then. People don't realise. Could you reuse boiler suits many times? And so it kind of, I suppose it was that. I quite like the idea of sort of like an upright dog species. And yeah, the sort of the conflict between the human colonists on their planet. And I think, I'm forever inspired isn't the right word, but I'm skeptical of the notion of borders and land and countries and flags, colonialism in all its forms, and who owns what territory. And, whether it's annexation of Ukraine or whether it's Palestine and Jerusalem, it leaves a horrible taste in my mouth. And again, I watch the news like everybody else does, and kind of that informed the bitter rivalry. And what happened, the colonialism, the human colonialism, and ultimate the slavery of the Loba as well.
Yeah, it does that. I think the fact that you can relate to that sort of gives it that sort of realistic edge. You might be on a planet where you have, as you say, dog-like creatures, but there's very much that conflict between them being subjugated and used as the underclass, the slave race. And again, this is, of course, where the Doctor is able to turn up and liberate things. And
somehow they can breed as well. I don't know how I got that one past the editor. Somehow you can have mixed species babies, and that's fine. That's fine. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. In space, these things are always possible.
It's science fiction. It's fiction.
Yeah. You created a memorable, I suppose, a misguided character, I suppose they would say, in Mikados. And he's obviously very welcoming of Graham at first, but then begins to question in a way that I suppose reflects a lot of people of faith, that they do begin to question their religion. And I thought that was quite a nice touch in there.
How did I get away with this book? I love, under the guise of fantasy, you can be so critical of institutions. I think originally it was definitely, I think the first title was called Doctrine. And then they were like, no, that's a bit too clever, clever. And so it became The Good Doctor. And also Dogma, that's where the dog people came from. I knew there was a reason for it. And so, I'm similarly quite skeptical of organized religion. I think faith can be a really powerful thing, but I think when you start having people telling you what you can and can't do because they claim to be in the know with something that is by definition unknowable, I'm just really kind of suspicious of that. And I grew up in the church, and I had nothing but positive experiences. But then as I got older, I'm kind of like, yeah, but okay, who wrote that down? Like, because maybe they had like a motive, and I noticed they're all men, and it's kind of women get a very rough ride in most world religions. And I was kind of like, I'm not sure we should be telling women what to do because of what you think about something that somebody maybe wrote down a really long time ago. Because again, if you know anything about translation as well, that's a movable feast. So.
Very much so. Of course, the book came out and got some great reviews. Doctor Who magazine raved over it. It's got a great rating on Goodreads.
Oh, so that must nice. Be. What did Doctor Who magazine say about it? I don't remember.
I won't call it up. I actually have it here.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever read this.
I am prepared. Hang on, just find it here in my files. This was from DWM issue 534. And nice big print cover. Reviewed by Elizabeth Miles, who's lovely, and saying, there's some marvellously pointed commentary on arguments about whether the Doctor could or should be a woman. Lobos's religion is inspired by the Doctor's first visit, but the facts have become twisted in the mists of history. The inhabitants believe that their saviour, the Good Doctor, to be a man, and the idea of him being a woman is nothing short of blasphemy, punishable by death. This forces Graham to do his best to be the Doctor, while the Doctor accepts a new name, the Nurse. Once again, the scope provided by a novel allows all the characters to take part in the action. While Graham tells dad jokes and feigns omnipotence, Ryan plays the part of a saint, and Yaz joins the resistance. Both Yaz and Ryan get a chance to show the value of what they've learned in their travels as they diffuse situations teetering on violence. Meanwhile, the Doctor enjoys sitting back for a while, content to let Graham have the spotlight, but is unable to tolerate the horrors she sees for long. There's some glorious characterisation of this regeneration of the Doctor. Her reactions to being called a god are wonderful, and when she's sent to fight in the arena and asked to choose a weapon, she wants a shield. Dawson perfectly captures the feel of the 2018 TV series, hopefully is the most important thing, and guns are very much disapproved of. This Doctor enjoys a good name drop or two, and she'll go further than most of her incarnations to find a peaceful solution to a problem. Smart and engaging, the Good Doctor is a superb addition to the Doctor's adventures. There we go.
Oh, that's about as good a review as I've ever had. That's wonderful. Oh, that's really cheered me up now. Lovely.
Oh, there we go.
Love that for me.
Excellent. Well, Elizabeth
I'd
Myers
forgotten
is
about the
Scottish.
nurse as well. I just made myself... Because that's the thing. I'm so glad you haven't asked me the super detailed questions about this book, because it was written so fast that out of all my books, I barely remember writing it. Like, I remember I did it all in a coffee shop. It was the year that I'd moved back to Hove, and I did the whole thing in a coffee shop, probably fueled on quite a lot of caffeine. But it was really fast turnaround. I remember the arena. I remember Yaz crawling around in some caves. But yeah, no, I'd forgotten about the nurse. That's brilliant. Well done, me.
It was great. I think particularly because it was that was it some stand-up comedian tried pretty early on to make a cheap joke, say Doctor Who, they'll have to rename it Nurse Who, and just got booed. I remember reading that somewhere online and just thought, that's an interesting reaction. So yeah, try a bit harder. Yeah, and just having a quick look in Goodreads, you've got a rating of 3.96. So
not bad for Goodreads.
Yeah, Doctor Who books tend to have an average of about between 3.5 and 3.6. So
okay.
There you go.
I'll take that, yeah.
Absolutely. So it seems that this was a bit of a joy for you to do, given that you've got an established writing career away from all things police box related, and this was obviously a little sidestep and under a lot of time pressures, as you said, but it's gone down well, and I suppose that's a great thing to have that book, and nobody can take it away from you. That's always there.
It really is. And I mean, God love her, Ella Watts, when we got Jodie in to do Doctor Who Redacted, Ella just whipped out this copy of The Good Doctor and got Jodie to sign it. I was like, why the fuck didn't I think of that? But that was, it was really lovely to bring them all back together. And I do, there was so little expanded universe stuff around the 13th Doctor, I think largely because of the pandemic, but also just it was a choice as well. And so it's very lovely to be such a part of the 13th Doctor period between the book and the podcast. I'm very pleased to have written for Jodie twice, because what an extraordinary talent she is. And that will forever be one of the core memories of my life, which was being in the recording studio with Jodie. That was really quite something.
Fantastic. So what are you working on at the moment, Juno, that people can look out for that's coming soon?
Yes, so we bring the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series to a finish this July. That's been a journey. The first book came out in 2021.
Wow.
So it's been 4 years, 4 books, and now finally we're at part 3 of the main trilogy. We did a spin-off as well. And so I really, really hope the first 2 have been received incredibly well. They've done really, really well. And the backstage, I need to start thinking about what the next novel is going to be, because how do you follow up something that's done so well? Like, the whole series has been Sunday Times bestsellers, so it's like, no pressure.
Oh, that's interesting. Is there anything else in the way you can discuss?
Okay, watch this space for a new announcement. There might be some more Doctor Who related stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. I shall ask no more for now. So where can people find you on social media to keep up with what you've been doing?
Well, I'm increasingly upset with social media platforms, but I'm still on Instagram for now, and just at Juno Dawson. Oh, actually, I'm on TikTok as well. So I'm also just at Juno Dawson on TikTok.
Fantastic. Juno, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with us in the Power of Three about The Good Doctor, which is the good read.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Juno. So, I'm a big Eurovision fan, so double the reason to look forward to the event this Saturday as we speak. Before we take a look at the contemporary review and what the readers have said in Goodreads, let's pause for a wee second and have a second and final extract from the audiobook, again by Claire Corbett, and still available from BBC Audio.
In the middle of a dust cloud, the doctor sat upright and shook the sand out of her hair. "Oof," she said. She got to her feet and strolled back to Tromos.
OK, so that's the first rule. I fear you because you're big and scary. Is that right?
Fight, girl!
In a minute. Hold your horses. What's the rush? These people have all paid for tickets, I'm assuming. Might as well give them their money's worth. So, in terms of fighting, what are the rules? Like, what's legal? Or is it a free-for-all? I was once at Ultimate Fighting Champion. Or was it Peladon?
She scratched her head.
I forget. Anyway, no rules at all. Biting, spitting, nipping. Just not cricket, is it?
Tromos looked back to Mikados, as confused as the audience. Mikados's nostrils flared. He turned to Macris.
Stimulate him.
Macris turned a knob on the remote control, and Tromos clutched the collar around his neck. He howled in pain. Staggering forwards, he flailed his arms around, and the doctor ducked and rolled out of the way with the greatest of ease.
That's not cricket either, is it? So, Mr. Tromos, is that legal? They're allowed to electrocute you to provoke a more violent fight?
Tromos fell to one knee.
Fear me!
The doctor dared to take a step closer.
I don't want to fight you, Mr. Tromos. We're not puppets, you or I.
Tromos snarled and charged forwards again.
Quiet, fool girl!
The doctor held out a hand.
Stop!
Tromos actually stopped.
Just wait a second. Am I right in thinking this is a fight to the death?
Tromos pulled at his collar, hitting at his chest.
I must kill you!
He kicked at the sand in frustration.
But what happens when I'm dead, Mr. Tromos? The doctor said calmly. What happens to you? Do you go free?
She stepped ever closer, right under his nose.
When were you last free? Have you ever been free?
Graham realised he was going light-headed from forgetting to breathe.
Kill her! Kill her! Kill her! Kill her!
The people in the crowd were now chanting and stamping their feet. Tromos was not the monster in this arena.
Hurt him,
Mikados hissed to Captain Macris.
I grow weary. Finish this farce.
Tromos dropped to his knees, tugging at the collar.
I'm sorry they've done this to you, Mr. Tromos, and I won't fight you. If you must, kill me. But it won't end the pain, and you won't be free.
Tromos looked up at her.
It hurts.
It was hardly a whisper. With a steady hand, the doctor reached for Tromos and scratched behind his ears.
Mr. Tromos,
she said, and the audience audibly gasped.
What you need is a vet, actually.
And then the little red light on Tromos's collar went from red to green with a little bleep.
What?
The doctor said, her forehead creasing.
That wasn't me.
Tromos blinked. He rose to his feet.
Mr. Tromos?
Pain gone.
Oh, OK. Well, that's good,
the doctor said cautiously. Tromos growled, his lips curling into a smile. But instead of crushing the doctor, he very slowly turned to face the box in which Graham was seated. Uh-oh.
Priest!
Tromos started to jog in their direction before breaking into a full charge.
Tromos, stop!
the Doctor cried, running after him.
I can help you!
You did this!
Tromos banged his huge, swollen body with equally massive fists.
Priest! Stun him! Knock him out!
Mikados stood, backing away.
The collar's not working.
Macris punched the controls with his fist, but they were dead.
Guards, open fire! Shoot to kill!
Ordered Mikados. Too late. With a mighty leap, Tromos propelled himself off the arena floor and into the audience. All around Graham, time seemed to slow down as this mutant creature flew at them. Already people were screaming and falling over themselves to get to the exits. Bodies blocked the tunnels. It was a stampede. There was no way out. With his deadly claws, Tromos hauled himself into the VIP box. Mikados grabbed Graham, using him as a human shield.
Oi!
Graham yelped.
Don't you bloody dare!
He struggled, and the pair collapsed in a heap to the floor of the box.
You turned Tromos into a beast!
The Hulk loomed over them, tearing up a row of chairs and hurling it into the arena. Spit dripped down onto Graham's face. All he could do was cover himself with his cuffed arms.
And now, I will be free!
Now, let's do what we always do and get a contemporary review for a Doctor Who book. And we're going to see what Doctor Who magazine issue 534 had to say. I picked out some highlights for Juno earlier, so let's have the full version from Lisbeth Miles's review. Vault 13 uses a lot of religious references: death and rebirth, apple seeds, Adam and Eve. The Doctor even quotes the Book of Revelation. But Juno Dawson's The Good Doctor is a straight-up takedown of an oppressive religion. After bringing an end to civil war on the planet Lobos, Ryan realises he's left his phone behind. When the TARDIS crew return, they discover that it's 600 years later, and their previous interference has been instrumental in centuries of oppression. Like Vault 13, it's a familiar enough setup. There's a corrupt government opposed by rebels, and the Doctor's keen to start a revolution. What sets it apart is the sense of responsibility felt by the TARDIS crew for what's happened. Graham's guilt is particularly heavy, as his parting joke is used to justify the enslavement of the indigenous people of Lobos. The engagement with colonialism is common enough in Doctor Who stories, but Dawson ably adds racism and sexism to her themes. She shows the value of small acts of kindness in a cruel world. They won't start the revolution, but they can change individual lives. And there's something marvellously pointed commentary on arguments about whether the Doctor could or should be a woman. Lobos's religion is inspired by the Doctor's first visit, but the facts have become twisted in the mists of history. The inhabitants believe their saviour, the Good Doctor, to be a man, and the idea of him being a woman is nothing short of blasphemy, punishable by death. This forces Graham to do his best to be the Doctor, while the Doctor accepts a new name, the Nurse. Once again, the scope provided by a novel allows all the characters to take part in the action. While Graham tells dad jokes and feigns omnipotence, Ryan plays the part of a saint, and Yaz joins the resistance. Both Yaz and Ryan get a chance to show the value of what they've learned in their travels, as they diffuse situations teetering on violence. Meanwhile, the Doctor enjoys sitting back for a while, content to let Graham have the spotlight, but is unable to tolerate the horrors she sees for long. There's some glorious characterisation of this regeneration of the Doctor. Her reactions to being called a god are wonderful, and when she's sent to fight in the arena and asked to choose a weapon, she wants a shield. Dawson perfectly captures the feel of the 2018 TV series. Hope is the most important thing, and guns are very much disapproved of. The Doctor enjoys a good name drop or two, and she'll go further than most of her incarnations to find a peaceful solution to a problem. Smart and engaging, The Good Doctor is a superb addition to the Doctor's adventures. There we go, Lisbeth liked it, so Doctor Who magazine gave it a thumbs up seal of approval. As we pop over to Goodreads to find out what readers thought, It's had a rating of 3.96 out of 5. 5-star reviews, 28%. 4 stars, 44%. 3-star, 21%. 2-star, 3%. And 1, 14%. Let's have a quick look at some of the reviews. Half gave it a 5-star review and said, "As the first Doctor Who book I've ever read, I loved it. Juno Dawson has written a brilliant story that perfectly depicts the Doctor we all know and love. The humour was perfect, Graham desperate to be back in time for Pointless. I'm definitely hoping to read more books in this series now." There was a 4-star review from Lady Nerd. "This is perhaps the best story 13 has had so far, and that makes me sad. This shows the difficulties of being a female Doctor in ways that the show never has, and every companion has something to do that gives them a bit of character, another thing the show hasn't done successfully. Apart from all that, it's a great Who story because it takes into account what the Doctor's actions bring to a community after they're gone. The Doctor's speeches are fantastic and inspiring too." There's a 4-star review from Bill, presumably not Potts. "Having loved the first 4 new TV episodes featuring Jodie Whittaker, I thought I would take a risk in this book. Did it pay off? Well, it certainly started off well, with decent characterisation of the Doctor and her new companions. This was no easy task when they have barely been established in the TV series yet. The plot is nicely handled, with the Doctor returning to a planet after a previous visit to find her earlier interference has changed history, and not for the better. In some ways, it is quite an old-fashioned Who tale, with the Doctor and her companions being split up and facing difficulties separately. What I enjoyed most about the novel was the way Juno Dawson judged the humour perfectly, and how it added to the story rather than detracted from it. This was her first Doctor Who novel. I hope it won't be her last. Well, you can always go one better than doing a novel and write a TV episode. Yeah, I think that works. A bit of a promotion. That's us. We're nearly out of time. Remember, you can follow us on social media. We're at Power of 3 Pod on Twitter. You can find us on Blue Sky at Finished Zine, FINISHEDZINE, my personal one. We have a Facebook group as well. You can follow us there and join in the chat. Tell us what you thought about this book. And also, if you have enjoyed today's episode, please do leave a review on iTunes or wherever it is you get your podcasts from, because they're always much appreciated. That's us, all ready to go. But we do need a song to play out with, and there's one that I think that would be very appropriate to go with. To play us out today, I've chosen us a song with a Eurovision and indeed a Doctor connection. This is Eurovision's 2009 song from Finland by Sami, and it's called Doctor Doctor. And I actually remembered this video when I watched it because it's got some very nice looking 60s chicks in groovy clothes and knee-high boots. Think a bit like Millie Gibson in last year's The Devil's Chord, but even a little bit more cheeky. Until next time, I've been Kenny Smith. Bye bye.
Doctor, I confess, Doctor, I'm a mess. Can you write me a prescription or two? I'm a little bit obsessed. The voices in my head repeat this crazy tune. 1, 2, 3, 4. Doctor, doctor, make it better. My body is a slave to the rhythm. Doctor, doctor, cool this fever. 'Cause I'm burning up the dance floor, and I can't take no more. I need a cure. Calling sick to work, 'cause yesterday's a blur, and tonight I need emergency care. My heart beats like a drum, addicted to the rush.